Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this session of the Supply Chain Sustainability School called Habitat Matters. I'm Shaun McCarthy. I chair the board of the Supply Chain School, and I also run the infrastructure group within the school. My job really today is simply to introduce Adam. I think biodiversity is starting to become a more and more important topic in our sector as we really understand the impact on our planet of the things that we do, and certainly a lot of legislation and good practice is going that way. So we feel it's really beneficial to actually share some learning around this topic, and really pleased to have Adam on board as an expert. So Adam, I'll say no more and hand over to you.
Thank you very much, Shaun. It's greatly appreciated you come along today, and thank you for introducing me. And I look forward to you engaging at the end of the presentation as well. So why are we here? Today we're going to look at how we can demonstrate good social value as part of the ESG message, or environmental social governance, and how we get people to engage in the environment around them, connect the community to the urban environment around them, and also connect them with nature, and learning how we as a society can enhance the urban environments through collaboration, whilst also improving the health and well-being through positive engagement with nature. So my name's Adam Kane. I'm the sustainability lead at ACO in the UK. We're a proprietary product manufacturer for surface water management solutions. So anything to do with rainwater, we'll provide a technology for it. I am the lead for continued professional development and develop quite a lot of the different presentations we make. And I also manage anything to do with sustainability, decarbonisation, biodiversity, including biodiversity messaging, and also the measurement of embodied carbon within the product. So anything to do with sustainability, I'm either in control of or I influence at ACO as a company. So I just wanted to try and introduce you to Habitat Matters and the terminology and where it came from, where it stemmed from. It all really came from the COP26, which was up in Scotland. And we were aiming to be there, and we wanted to do something for the nature campaign that they were running. And the idea was we wanted to really focus on biodiversity in the built environment. And what we did, we had an 8-part webinar series combined with a 6-part podcast series led by Architecture Day. And what this culminated in was that we focused on different areas of biodiversity in the built environment and what we can do in a positive way to integrate it. What this ultimately culminated in was the creation of a mapping system which could map out the physical environment, and then the physical environment and the digital environment, and connect people to that digital asset while they're in the physical environment, but also allowing them to submit observational data, how they felt about engaging in the environment, and also submit biodiversity information that contributed to national scientific efforts. But before I show you the mapping system, you get more of an understanding of where we've gone on this journey, I just wanted to go through the drivers and what we found out from the webinar campaign and some of the facts and figures leading up to the mapping system being generated and why you should use it. So what we learned, essentially, what did we learn on our journey through the webinar series? First of all, we learned that urbanization being driven by population growth, both nationally and internationally. We found that 56% of global populations now live in city environments or urban environments. And in a little over 200 years, we've gone from being 1 billion people back in 1804 to 8 billion people now, 7 billion people now, sorry. So that's a huge jump. We are seeing between 2000 and 2030, there's going to be natural 290,000 kilometers squared of natural habitat will be converted into cities, which is larger than the whole of the entire United Kingdom. And adding to this, in 2021, we saw mankind saw a grim milestone where man-made mass like concrete, bricks, metals and plastics now outweigh all the biomass on the planet. So it really is quite stark in the way that we're going, and we need to evolve the way that we kind of integrate the built environment into nature, and we integrate nature into the built environment, and we make it kind of a priority, along with water resources and other natural capital assets need to be built into the very fabric of the built environment assets. So doing this will help us reverse the negative impacts of population growth and urbanization on the natural environment. We've seen over the last 60 years a 60% loss in global biodiversity, and this is kind of an average. It's actually higher for insect species, and this is quite critical in terms of they're the very baseline. Other key indicator species are also falling dramatically, like amphibians. This could be likely linked to the 90% decrease in vital aquatic habitats like lowland ponds in the 20th century. And we've also seen huge declines in things like hedgehogs, and these declined by 97% on 1950s levels. And that's really is stark. I mean, think of the number, 97%, is an absolutely monumental number, and something drastic action needs to be taken. We need to stop this decline. We're at the moment, the UK are in the bottom 10% in the world for biodiversity depletion. We're in the bottom 3 in the whole of Europe as well. So that's really just indicating that we've been on the decline for a very long time. This has been due to centuries of industrialization and urbanization, and also agriculture comes into that as well, in the way that we grow our food and feed animals. And of course, us as a species, we're becoming increasingly disconnected from nature as well. We spend more time indoors, we spend more time looking at screens, and we spend less time outdoors in the natural environment. So if we don't change our built environment to be more engaging and diverse, we'll risk inflaming a health crisis of tomorrow. And when I say that, I mean that because nature and diverse habitats underpin a healthy, prosperous environment for us all. It's not only imperative to design green and blue infrastructure for nature, it's also important to connect the community to nature itself. Now, if we liken this green and blue space to our health and demonstrating good social value, we can actually connect it to the public health work that was done, or the Public Health England's work that was done on improving access to green space, where they estimated that it would save £2.1 billion if everyone had access to good green space. There's also evidence that shows that linking us to green and blue space also has a range of more favourable physiological outcomes, including the way that we repair after injury or illness, and also the way that we can learn as well, which I'll focus on the next couple of slides. But first, I just want to focus on biodiversity, and having a diverse range of urban habitats and different plant species and a variety of different blue infrastructure, it can have a really positive effect on biodiversity, where it's been found that some bee species actually thrive in urban areas due to the high density of different plant species. And it's important that we design really rich streetscapes, not only for our health, but also for the health of natural systems, and also create that resilience as well, and broaden out and connect those different ecological networks, which is really fundamental to make sure that no matter where nature finds itself in the urban environment, it's always got a place where it can find refuge or find foraging opportunities or water. And of course, if we're designing a diverse range of urban habitats and creating this connection with nature, it's really important for our development and health. And now children who engage with nature have a larger hippocampus in their brain. And this is the area of the brain that's used for problem solving. And if we think about society in general, then we need problem solvers of the future to deal with the issues that we face with climate change and things of that nature. And the adults who engage in nature have decreased levels of stress and also decreased levels of anxiety as well. So we have to ensure we have to protect the environment around us and make sure there is a tangible connection. Now, just moving on, but people really care about building, engaging prosperous environments for nature for us. Well, they really do actually. So in a recent Nature Positive 2030 report, it stressed the need that for effective surveying and monitoring of nature to underpin policy and action across sectors. So it's really important that we get people engaging in nature conservation and engaging in creating a positive interaction with nature, which in turn essentially it makes a stronger community, and also makes people care about the urban environment around them. And there was another slide that was on here, and it showed that between 2014 and 2018, the engagement with nature increased by 50%, and people were having more positive views towards nature. And we found this during the pandemic as well, in terms of the way that people wanted to engage in nature and find their spaces, and it was good for their well-being, and the understanding of that increased exponentially as well. So it would be interesting if there was a report out there that actually solidified those findings. Now, in the UK, there are tens of thousands of working ecologists, and there are over 70,000 volunteers that collect biodiversity data and upload it to tens of different biodiversity collection tools on the market. And the reason why I raise this is that there's a bit of a gap in the market in terms of the way that we, as a construction industry, the way that we actually connect people with nature is fantastic in terms of if we actually incorporate blue and green infrastructure into it. But we don't have the ability to monitor how people are engaging and actually allowing them to then go to that site and then collect that biodiversity information and understand why the built environment and the fabric of the built environment is built the way it is. And then moving on is more talking about what are the government doing about this, and how are they trying to create that kind of connection and make sure we've got incorporating that biodiversity into the built environment. So there's now the Environmental Act is now enshrined in law. This ensures for advanced environmental protection. There's also very similar frameworks in Scotland and Wales. All these laws and guidance is that biodiversity has to be left in a better state than it was previously, and we have to monitor, assess and consider and advise or report on the protection of the natural environment, and make sure there's maintenance, restoration or enhancement of the natural environment after the built asset goes live. And obviously the built environment is no exception to this, in making sure that we build something that's got resilience in the future. And this really translates into something called biodiversity net gain, which is a terminology which is consistently used in the construction industry. And just to explain what biodiversity net gain is, so it's going to be made mandatory for developers, and it'll be for a particular size site. I'm not sure if it'll be for individual properties, but it'll be for larger sites. And the idea is that you leave the land in a better state than before it was developed, and providing at least a 10% biodiversity net gain in respect of any new development that results in habitat loss or degradation. And hopefully we won't develop a pristine forest, but we have to consider that if there is going to be felling or anything like that, then we have to ensure that we plant trees and we make sure there's infrastructure in place. In this example on the left-hand side, and this was a HS2 project, which I did get permission to use the images, but you can see they've got a bat box at the top of the post there. So making sure you've got those resilient measures in place while the trees and everything become more prosperous and they actually start to grow. So making sure you've got those mitigating the impacts over time. And just to iterate, I know me as a representative of a company, and we majority deal with SUDs, but it's important that you take account of biodiversity net gain, implementing nature-based solutions, and also SUDS technologies. And these are really important to forging the connection between us and nature, and making sure that we can support good social outcomes and that health and well-being, which I've been discussing throughout this presentation, whilst also enhancing the ecological systems in place, and also connecting different ecological networks to make sure there's this kind of abundance going throughout a system. So what are we doing as a kind of a manufacturer, and trying to demonstrate that social value and trying to get out there and actually do something, and how can we support the construction industry professional, demonstrate that social value, and also encouraging that community engagement in assets and with nature. So how essentially do we create that connection between the community, the built environment, and those natural systems, unlocking social capital and contributing towards that national biological record keeping and the future maintenance and management of the built environment habitats for the benefit of biodiversity and also ourselves. So enter the room is the Habitat Matters mapping system. The best way of explaining it is, well, I'll just go through it one by one. You can see some of the instructions there, but it'll become more clear. So essentially what we've done is you can replicate the physical environment in the digital environment using a range of categories from Natural England's biodiversity matrix, the small sites matrix, or even the UK Hab unified habitat classification. So we've got a range of different things. And we've also added site features, different technologies, and we've also had the ability to add links and all that kind of stuff, even if it's external to ACO. So the idea is that you can mimic or replicate the physical site that you created and even import it using a GIS system. And what we do is for each habitat and feature that's added to the site, you can add biological data pertaining to it. So if you had an ecological survey conducted on that particular site before it went live, then you can incorporate that into the site, into the fabric of the data. So therefore people understand what they're likely to see on the site and hopefully record it in the future to demonstrate how it's proliferating and how it's improving for that particular species. Built in, we've also got a maintenance and the management and maintenance information as well that can be added so that people understand the correct procedures that should take place and why maybe, like we see commonly on the roads as we move around the highway network, that we're letting grass grow for nature and letting people understand that the reason why we're not cutting the grass and we're allowing it to grow and grow in a natural way is so that it's actually for the benefit of nature and obviously mitigating any risk in the future from wildfires and all that kind of stuff at the end of that growing season. So here's just a lot of things going on, bit of a pathway. But the ideology is you can either draw the site on there physically, you can import it using GIS information. And what's showing is that once you've actually incorporated it into the map, then the idea is that you can put a sign out on the site and it has a unique QR code, depending on if it was the habitat, if it was the whole site, or whether it was the technology you're dealing with. If it was next to a bird box, you've got a QR code underneath it, and then somebody can tell you the particular species that is using that bird box when they monitor it or scan it to add wildlife data. But the idea is that you can add the technologies as well, so other professionals can understand the way that they should be used or the way they should be using a certain technology and what that technology is. For this example, we're showing a climate tunnel and showing that that's going across one of the roads and enables the invertebrates and everything to travel onto the road to go to other waterborne areas. So the idea is that the individual can submit the biodiversity information. First thing they can do is they can give feedback, they can add comments, they can chat, so therefore, and they can rate the environment you're dealing with. This could be quite invaluable for local councils or asset owners, so they understand that the user experience, they can understand that something's not being maintained properly, or there's an excessive amount of rubbish, or there's graffiti or something of that nature, and feed that back to the asset owner so they can take action on that. The other part is that they can submit biodiversity observational data. Now, the critical thing about the biodiversity observational data is it facilitates education, but also it allows the user to contribute to national scientific efforts. So what happens is that you'd be on a site, you take a picture of a butterfly or a hedgehog or something other form of nature, a fox, and then you upload to the site. You might not know what it is. So you might take a picture of the butterfly and you don't know, and you just put a common butterfly from a drop-down menu, then you submit it. And what happens is, because you're registered with the site, then it will go to the Biological Record Centre, and then they'll verify what it is. So they'll tell you the name of the butterfly, they'll correct it, and then you'll receive an email to update you and tell you what that butterfly actually was. It takes some time sometimes, but you're getting it from a professional, somebody who does it as a volunteer, to understand and learn what you're actually observing in the physical environment. And from that, the Biological Record Centre, that data then goes to contributing towards national scientific efforts with the State of Nature report at the end of the year. So what we've done with this type of technology, or this type of mapping and connection and everything like that, is you've connected the physical environment with the observations you're taking for biodiversity net gain. Not that you should get a professional to do it, but you're getting observational data coming back. And then it's actually connecting the physical environment with national scientific efforts and creating that community cohesion, that ownership, and that getting the community to embrace the asset. Just some examples of what I've done personally in terms of the way that we're launched. This has been quite of a light launch. We're trying to build up asset information. So I started off in my back garden just to understand how it works. And you can see that we've got a range of flower beds, we've got raised pond, green walls, and you've got bird boxes and feeders. And you can scan the QR code to see it if you want to. Uploaded a picture or two, not many, but then started making a few little observations, mainly foxes, pigeons, things of that nature. But just trying to understand what is physically there. I've got a very small plot in London, not very big. I haven't monitored enough, but I do see quite a lot of biodiversity. I need to add more of it. But you can see that you can add a range of different things, even if it's on a very compact site. In the following example, we've got a large road development or road project that serves the local community. We worked with the local council or Wokingham Council. We did a kind of trial to understand where we could put the sign on the site or where it would look best for the public. But we haven't actually managed to implement the sign. We're still working with the council on that. But on this particular development, there's a range of ditches, ponds, swales. There's different bridge structures. There's tunnels going under the road. There's escape ladders from the gully pots. So they've taken a lot of different measures in order to mitigate the impact of the development itself and encourage nature to come back in. We've got the ponds and we put the sign next to it, and you're connecting that physical environment. So you've got the QR code, you've got information on the sign telling you about the site, telling you why it's been developed and why the biodiversity measures and the animals or the natural environment is aiming to support. And then you can actually allow them to access that information, comment on the infrastructure, and obviously contribute to that biodiversity observations and that go into national scientific efforts. So really is kind of what are the benefits of this in terms of the outcomes. I've talked a lot about the social value that it has and that community engagement. Now, the different features on the map can help achieve elements of biodiversity net gain and contribute to the national biological record keeping and all those different scientific efforts. It enables you to be more inclusive and engaging, allowing the evaluation of the net gain approach and give that baseline data in terms of what has actually been seen on the site, and also allowing the community to come into that engagement and that monitoring. It wouldn't replace any ecological survey or reporting that was required after the site's gone live, but it does contribute towards it. The user can feed back that best practice for the effective management of habitats and help with the mitigation measures that need to be taken on the site as well. This is really a critical tool, or can be used as an effective tool to help people understand what additional actions need to be taken, such as local council with additional actions or different measures can be taken. And it helps the monitoring of the local environment and biodiversity also allows for better outcomes for nature, where people that actively engage in nature are more likely to reach out and take additional measures in their own lives. And essentially the built environment could be the first step for them to understand the environment around them and the actions they need to take and what they can do to behave in a positive way towards nature. And of course, the QR code also, it allows you to create an intriguing story and also enables you to interact and develop knowledge and skills through engagement with nature, and is also a key driver for the amenity pillar in SUDS, and supports that community environmental learning and encouraging ownership of the asset, with potential for litter picking within the local environment, a way of protecting it to make sure there's not degradation in the future, and creating that future legacy as well, where the local community will protect and manage the urban environment assets that have been implemented, and all the other wider benefits that go with it when you think about improving your physical and mental well-being by getting out there in nature and engaging in it, improving the local environment, looking at that social relationships in terms of people can engage through the comments section or where they want to actually do something, and also enhancing that skills and knowledge through that feedback of information coming from the built environment asset, but also that biodiversity information on the site and what to look out for. And thank you for listening. If you've got any questions, I'd love to hear them. So, and that's me. That's a picture from a long time ago, unfortunately. I need to get another professional picture lined up where I can actually display my more shiny head.
Thanks very much for that presentation. It's fascinating. There's a couple of questions in the chat, just simply, what is this program called?
It's Habitat-Matters is the program, and you'll find all the training resources on the website.
So another question, do you have a region that you operate in, or are you nationwide?
Nationwide, national, yeah, absolutely. As an individual, then I can go anywhere from up to Scotland to Ireland. So yeah, sustainability is UK wide and Ireland.
Brilliant, thank you. And is this just, I mean, you mentioned, using it on developments and that sort of thing. So is this a product that you sell to developers and companies, etc.?
I didn't say that actually. It's completely free.
Completely free.
The tool is free at the point of access. So whoever wants to use it, feel free to. We offer training and everything as well, workshops. And we're really just trying to get those more altruistic built environment professionals to come forward and utilize it as a tool. Yeah. So it's completely free. You're more than welcome. If you have any questions while you're using it, then you can come back to me and we can provide the training resources for it.
Brilliant, thank you. Yeah, we like free stuff. So we've got a lot of questions and comments now. So yeah, there's one related to a question that I was going to ask as well. So thanks to Ruth Davey for this one. Is there a time frame for the 10% net gain? Thinking of the HS2 example, how would you ensure 10% gain in the long term? And I was going to ask a similar question because I have cause to visit a housing estate that was built a few years ago. A lot of the places are for first-time buyers. And they've got some green space there, and they've got like a balancing pond and some reed beds for surface water. And on this piece of green space, there are some trees have been planted. I think the last time I went there, I counted 10, of which 8 of them are dead.
Yeah.
Are there processes for following these things up? When we're looking at biodiversity net gain, it's a lovely principle. I know it's enshrined in law now, but is it practical to implement and to police?
Yeah, so they've got in the guidance in the Environmental Act, they've actually got it where it says that it has to be monitored in the future. So that means you have to have another ecological survey conducted so that there's a follow-up period. And this is, I think it's 5, 10 and 15 years. So that means that the actions that have been taken on the site that demonstrate the environmental net gain have to be monitored in the future. Now, it has to come down to if the government are going to have any teeth on this issue and if they're going to take it seriously, or if it's just something that's going to be put onto a piece of paper. We all remember, or some of us remember, the SAB officers when they're meant to be implemented in the UK, and that kind of got scaled back quite quickly, and there was a lot of resistance to it. So this is enshrined in law, but then they have to come up with some kind of committee or some kind of way of monitoring it and giving local authorities the power to monitor it as well through their networks and have their own ecological surveys done, rather than it being a de facto, I'll just get my own ecological survey conducted by somebody internal to the company and it not actually being done properly. There has to be a rate paid or a tax paid on the asset that's being implemented and money set aside, ring fence, to make sure that it's practical in the future. And also those companies need to be held accountable for the implementation of these. So in 15 years time, then they have to go back to be able to go back to them and say, well, the measures haven't worked. You have to replant them, or you have to carry out in a logical way. And in answer to your question about maturity of these trees and things, I think we have to kind of think about a level of a bottom-up approach in terms of this, and we have to make sure that at all levels, in terms of when I talk about height, at all levels, while that tree is reaching maturity, we have to make sure that there's biodiversity measures at ground level that have been installed straight away. And when I say that, I mean really perennial flowering plants and making sure there's lots of beds of them while the tree is maturing in the background. So you end up with that mitigating the impact until pure maturity. And the other one was that I found really interesting was, I think it was Institution of Architects. They basically said that for every single dwelling that is built, there should be a bird box or a bat box integrated into the fabric of the building. And I think that we have to make sure we've got these mitigation measures in place. And that means that using the eaves of buildings appropriately and making sure we're integrating mitigation measures into the fabric of the building, because you're right, you're not going to have those assets available for a long time that's going to help nature prosper.
Thank you. There's a couple of other questions on the chat, but just a quick follow-up question for me when we're talking about these issues of biodiversity net gain, enforcement, local authorities being able to check, etc. That then begs a question about, are there enough ecologists in the UK? And is there a professional qualification process? Because I can kind of see biodiversity net gain becomes a thing. Every consultant under the sun says, yeah, we can do an ecological survey. Actually, they can't. And then you end up with like a supply and demand issue for well-qualified ecologists, and then maybe potentially people who aren't so well qualified not doing such a good job coming into the market simply because there's money there. Have you any thoughts on that?
There is a professional body. It escapes me what it's actually called, which is annoying because that could be very helpful for people. It'll come to me in a minute. No, it was Gemma Jerome that was one of the directors there. But there are a couple of professional bodies that can help with the qualification, and then they come up on the screen that the CIMEM. So yeah, that's the professional body. Thank you for the comment, Catherine, and also Joe. But that's the professional body they have to adhere to. But you're right. But there are enough ecologists in the country, definitely, because you have to have them anyway, because you have to have ecologists to do site surveys before a site goes live, and that has to contribute to the environmental impact assessments that then get carried forward and that is given to the council for them to approve a scheme going forward or not. There's enough of a network, and if this is going to be implemented over the next 5, 10, 15 years, then that means that we could probably have to plug the skills gap if there is going to be one. And the Supply Chain Sustainability School, I'm sure you could come up with some training resources. So, yeah.
I'm sure we can, absolutely. So a couple of questions then in the chat. Can this be used for companies to report?
I'd say you always have to, I think it can create a baseline. I wouldn't say that because it would be the public contributing information, then I wouldn't say that. I'd always say that you need to use an ecological survey, but to demonstrate social value and engagement and understand how many people are actually using it, are using a space or using the asset that you created, I think you could use it for reporting. Because you have to log in order to actually comment and things of that nature, we thought of it that way because we didn't want bots and things attacking it and just posting really random content. So the idea is that there's a security field in front of it so that you actually have to log in to do all that kind of stuff. In some ways that is a barrier, but at the same time, at least you're getting pure information from individuals or people or actual people.
That's great, thank you very much. And yeah, we all suffer from bots if we run websites. So a great question from Joe Ferguson. I think this is a great engagement and education tool, but in terms of scientific data, is there a risk that many difficult to photograph species, so fast moving, nocturnal, etc., might be under-recorded, so they're not part of the conversation? And do you have information on this app for those species to engage people, even if they're difficult to see?
Right, I see. Yeah. So what we generally do is we direct people to the biological record keeping website because they contain all the resources, and I'd never want to compete with that. I completely agree with you in terms of those fast moving species, and this is why it would never replace an ecological survey. And it's more about starting to get that engagement going in terms of trying to get people just to engage in the built environment and understand that we're trying to do something. And hopefully, I think that you've alluded to it really, in terms of the more people are encouraged by the things they've learned, then the more likely they are to go into more depth and start to understand that there are fast moving things and microscopic things that need to be photographed as well. But I 100% agree with you that that might be something is missed or excluded. And that's, again, the reason why an ecological survey is so important, and it's regulated and make sure that it's moved forward.
Yeah, so this is not a substitute for an ecological survey. It's very much, as you said in your presentation, it's about citizen science, and a really good comment from Ruth Davies saying, well, yeah, this is a really good way of engaging the public in this whole topic. So it's more of a education and big data thing. It's not instead of doing a proper ecological survey for a development.
Absolutely. No, 100%, absolutely 100%.
Brilliant. Oh, I think we're done with questions. There's certainly no further questions in the chat. Yeah, I mean, thanks very much for that, Adam. I think personally, I think that was a fascinating presentation, and what you're trying to do, free of charge to get people engaged. And I think it's ironic when you were saying earlier about, more than half the world now is covered by man-made assets, if you like, rather than natural habitat. But the way in which we've evolved as a species and the technology that we've evolved has enabled you to do things like this. So it's kind of, without the technology, we wouldn't be able to do those things. So fantastic. I mean, a great thing for people to get involved in. We are recording this session, so we will be putting it up on the school, and then obviously pointing it to people who are interested. But I think at peak today, we've had nearly 60 people on the call. So thanks very much to all of you for joining, and thanks a lot to Adam for a fascinating presentation, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you very much for attending. Thank you, Shaun, as well. That's fascinating.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.